While I love all the cases I take the time to make videos about on this channel, the thought of doing this case got me so damn hyped. This case is so good, and I think that a decent amount of the fanbase would consider this one of their favourites, me included. So fuck this intro, let's get into the case. I promised myself I wouldn't talk about Nagito too much in my videos for the second game. But here we are, Nagito part fucking 1. It would be impossible to not talk about Nagito in an alarming amount of depth in this video, because literally the entire case revolves around him. The first thing I want to talk about with this case though, is the whole build-up for it. Some cases in Danganronpa, normally the lesser cases in my opinion, don't really affect the overall story. And I know that if you went through every case with a fine comb, I'm sure there'd be some sort of effect on the story. But sometimes it kinda just feels like killing off some of the characters and getting to the next bit. This case is not one of them. This case feels like it had so much impact on the overall story. It feels less like a single murder case, and more like a cog in the big wheel of Danganronpa. To me, it felt like this trial was being built up to from the very first trial when Nagito revealed that he was fucking insane. For the whole game up to this point, I felt like Nagito was a ticking time bomb, and I was so excited for his big moment. And I cannot express how happy I was that he got his big moment. I mentioned in my first video that while I love Byakuya as an antagonist, I feel like the other two antagonists are so much better because they had this big final case, and it felt like all their fuckery led to something. This is what I mean. It feels so cathartic to have this big finale for Nagito. His character really deserved it. I talked a bit about how this case is built up in the 4th chapter, but for the sake of this video, I'm gonna sum up what happens in that chapter again. So, during the investigation, Nagito is given some information. We don't see it, but we can see the effect it has on him. It makes his attitude switch from self-deprecation and putting everybody else on a pedestal to literally reading us all to filth. Throughout the rest of the investigation of the trial, he acts so dumb with everything. He calls us all out on being stupid, disrespects everyone left and right, and just doesn't care about the trial at all, wanting it to be over as soon as possible. Honestly, this moment at the start of the trial when he just, it's like Kazuichi, made me cackle.
Then let's start with something even Miss Sonia can understand. Well, the weapon is obvious, right? What the heck, you guys?
This change in his behaviour is so successful at intriguing the player and hyping the player up for the next chapter. Nagito calls the Chapter 4 trial the opening act, and already seems to have a plan for what he's going to do, and the moment the trial is over, he wastes no time getting on with his grand plan. At the start of this chapter, Nagito is nowhere to be seen, and I absolutely love this uneasy atmosphere among everybody else. While we try to be positive and reflect on the last trial, there's that tension. No one knows where Nagito is, what he's doing, or why he was acting so strangely, and it's really unsettling in the best way. After one really unnerving encounter with Nagito on the new island, we decide to resort back to what we did after the first trial and capture Nagito to tie him up. Again, we love active protagonists. We make a very basic plan and wait for the time to come. You're just chilling in your cottage when, oh shit, Nagito is here! Just moments like this, is what makes this whole chapter so great. Nagito is weirdly smug and then lets you lead him to the hotel lobby where the others are waiting to capture him. Just as we get him, boom! So basically, Nagito's plan begins with blowing up the lobby and then threatening to blow up the whole island. Already with this one move, all of my expectations for Nagito's plan were blown out of the water, and the stakes for this chapter are established. This chapter is honestly one of the most exciting in the series so far. The pacing is really fast. Even in the free time events, there is this underlying stress, and when it's not free time, there is always something going on. And as soon as Nagito blows up the lobby, the stakes shoot through the roof and everything gets so stressful. It's almost impossible to pause the game during this chapter. This is like the climax of the second game. And similarly to the last chapter, because the story switches itself up so much and ramps up the stakes, you almost forget about the formula of the game. It becomes, holy fuck, what's gonna happen, are we all gonna explode? Rather than, oh ho ho, I wonder who's gonna die next. So, we have a little bit of internal drama, we all split up, and then eventually, we find where Nagito hid the bombs. This is probably where the panic reaches its peak. We realise that it's literally about to go off, and there's no way to disarm it, but then it turns out to be fireworks and everything is fine. This is the one moment in this chapter that the player can take a breath. The stakes are immediately dropped, and the player has a tiny moment of calm. Then we go next door to meet up with Nagito. All through this chapter, Nagito has been saying he's going to reveal the traitor. In this moment, you simply presume the bomb scare was a bluff to try and trick the traitor into revealing themselves. Because, I guess we have to admit, up until this point, while Nagito is batshit insane, he kinda has good intentions. Or at least, he thinks he has good intentions. So you internally call yourself stupid for believing that Nagito would actually blow everybody up, and you take a breath, and you go next door, and then shit hits the fan once again. Right, so I know this says Nagito Part 2, but I gotta split this Part 2 into 2 parts, because I think Nagito's case is one that is just as interesting to talk about from the perspective of a first playthrough and with the hindsight of the ending, and this is because of Nagito's motive. So yeah. To say that this case is full of surprises would be one of the grossest understatements I have ever heard. This case is so good at constantly surprising you, without seeming like the writers are reaching or doing things that don't fit with the characters or the universe they're in. This case, and the amount of twists and insanity in it, is why having a franchise like Danganronpa is so fun. Because Danganronpa is so insane, the writers can do insane things with some amazing payoff, without breaking the player's immersion. Something that is almost always guaranteed a strong reaction is the body discovery. But this case has even more bang for your buck in terms of shock value. Firstly, there's the person. The fact that someone like Nagito was the victim is shocking enough, but after all he's done in this chapter, the player might not be super surprised. And the second the body discovery music starts playing, everyone apart from Nagito is stood together, so there's literally no one else it could be. And yet, this is one of the most memorable body discoveries because of the state of Nagito's body. It is so brutal and horrifying, but what's most horrifying about it is the thought that someone did this to him. The 6 of us left have this unspoken bond and a deep trust of each other, or at least I felt that at this point in the game. They have good chemistry, and you as the player are put in a position where you think that they are all good people. And while you all agree that Nagito is an objectively bad person, the thought that one of you could do this to him is so hard-hitting. Something else that really hit me when I was playing this case for the first time is how I felt that anyone could have done it. Something the first game was really good at is that sense of unease when it comes to the other characters. The beta version of the game was called Distrust, and you can see why. You don't trust any of these people at all, and it's vital to the atmosphere of the game. But this game was less about being paranoid and suspecting everyone, and more about falling in love with the characters and then transforming into a pathetic puddle when they are revealed to have killed. But this case purposefully made us mistrust each other. We split up a few times so no one has an alibi, and I felt like the game went out of its way to give everyone a certain something that made them suspicious. It looks like Nagito was tortured. Fuyuhiko is the ultimate Yakuza, and would be more efficient in that regard. Sonya, right before the bomb was found, is not where she said she would be. Akane literally almost killed Nagito out of anger earlier in this chapter. Kazuichi has been someone with a strong hatred for Nagito from pretty much the start. He's also been more crushed than normal after Sonya making her feelings for both him and Gundam more than obvious at the end of the last chapter. And Chiaki, well, I never really trusted Chiaki from the start, but I'll get to that later. And as well as the suspicious behaviour, all of us have an extremely clear motive to torture and kill Nagito. You know, he was just threatening to blow up everything. Which again brings up a weird moral question. Does doing this to Nagito make you a bad person? And would you hate one of these characters you've grown emotionally attached to if they were to kill Nagito? You're able to think over these questions during the investigation time, which has the most amazing music ever. And even though later it gets revealed that none of you did this to Nagito, the time it gives you to think things over was really effective for me. Then we get to the trial. This trial is one of my absolute favourites because it's so interesting and full of twists, and the flow of the conversation always felt so natural. I tend to love the later trials more because there's less people, and the ones involved get the screen time they deserve. Characters don't often develop during the actual debates, but I love how the characters are so well established at this point that you could probably be given a script for the trial with the character names blanked out, and you'd be able to know exactly who was saying what. So yeah, this trial progresses really naturally. The characters bring up questions that I had as I was having them, and I love how quickly we come to the conclusion that Nagito committed suicide. It was just so fucked up to me that Nagito actually did all of this to himself. I completely forgot about the poison we found in his cottage. And honestly, the part I loved the absolute most is Hajime's uncertainty at the end of the first half of the trial. After we all come to the unbelievable conclusion that Nagito killed himself and tried to make it look like he was killed by someone else to trick us and get us all killed, Hajime basically says, "But is that really enough? Would Nagito really do all of this to himself just to get us all killed?" This is brilliant. I love how Nagito is such an insane character that him torturing and killing himself to trick everyone and get us all killed is just not enough for him. And the characters know this, Hajime knows this, and I love it. So we keep going and discover the full extent to Nagito's plan. At the halfway point, there are still some glaring questions about the case. Why did Nagito set the fire? Why did he do a fake bomb scare? Why is there poison in his room? Was the spear really the cause of death? And what the fuck is his motive? So, we explore all these lingering questions, and then come to this conclusion. That nobody knows who the killer is, not even Nagito. All the wounds on his body were just a distraction to hide the fact that he was actually killed by inhaling poisoned gas. Poison that he put in one of the fire grenades. Poison that one of us threw at him. This would make his motive to create an unsolvable mystery, since the actual killer is completely random. When this was being revealed, I was losing my shit. Like, just when you think it's crazy enough, the plan becomes even crazier. And oh ho ho, we aren't even done yet. There are still quite a few things that haven't quite come into Nagito's plan, and those main two are the fact that he was searching for the traitor during this chapter, and his ultimate talent. When you put these two things together, you can just about figure out the final layer to this mystery. Nagito has his ultimate look, that he even pointed out earlier in this chapter. He trusts his ultimate look above anything else. Taking his trust in his look into account, would Nagito really not have someone in his mind for his plan to kill him? Anything that is random or left down to luck so far in this game has been linked to Nagito. His random drawing in the first trial was planned by him, and he used his luck to get the outcome he wanted. Similarly, the Russian roulette in the last chapter was left down to luck as well, and he used it to his advantage. So we try to think, who would Nagito want to target? The traitor. Long story short, Chiaki turned out to be the traitor, and we have to convince everyone to vote for her despite being super close. So yeah, this trial gets really emotional. And Chiaki sacrifices herself to save everyone else, and thank fucking God we were right. By the end of the trial, we think that Nagito's motive was to separate the traitor and get them executed. But then Monokuma steps in and says, "Congrats, you've successfully thwarted Nagito's plan." So we find out that Nagito's actual motivation was to kill everyone apart from the traitor. My first reaction to this was, fucking pardon? It was a great twist, and once again bigs up the discovery Nagito made in chapter 4. Whatever this information was, knowing it made Nagito want to kill everyone apart from the traitor. So yeah, the player is now extremely hyped for the big twist of the overall story, which will come literally straight after this trial. Now, let's get to Nagito Part 2. This next section is going to very thoroughly spoil the ending of Danganronpa 2, so if you haven't played this game, firstly, why are you here? I've spoiled so much in these videos, but hey, hope you don't mind spoilers. The main twist at the end of this game, and the information that Nagito received at the end of the 4th chapter, is that the whole cast of this game were followers of Junko. We were called the Remnants of Despair, and after Junko's death, we continued her work of spreading despair and chaos throughout the world. The world we are in currently is actually a VR simulation made by the Future Foundation to try and rehabilitate us so that we could join society again. Hence the name Goodbye Despair. I could only imagine what Nagito thought when he first found this out. He is so obsessed with the idea of hope and ultimate good winning that the fact that all these people he looked up to so much, and himself, were actually working in the name of despair and did such terrible things must have destroyed him. I feel that knowing this information just pushed Nagito over the edge. He's so unhinged in this chapter, and I love it. So Nagito, with this new information, decided immediately that he would have to do something. And we know that he made his plan right then and there, because he knew he would need the poison and the bomb from the Octagon. And also, the fact that he was carrying, in his fucking hoodie or something, a bomb and a bottle of poison for the entirety of the 4th trial is so messed up. That could actually be part of the reason he wanted to get through the trial so quickly. So in hindsight, Nagito's motive was that he wanted to kill everyone in the cast, apart from the traitor who was a part of the Future Foundation, because he was so horrified and disgusted by what they all did in the name of despair. He thought that if he could make the traitor the one who killed him, and trick the rest of them into getting the answer wrong in the trial, he would have achieved his goal. And I love how he has so much faith in his luck that he knows the traitor will be the one who kills him, even if he never finds out who they are. His whole plan hangs on his talent, and I really love cases that do this. If the killer in a case uses their ultimate talent as part of their plan, I automatically love that case just that little bit more. It makes the whole thing feel like it's come full circle. Now, let's take a minute to discuss Nagito's very extreme views and skewed perception of the world, and how this case literally couldn't have happened if he were a more traditional antagonist. In Nagito's childhood, he learns that in life, a bad event is often followed by a good one, and that sometimes, in order for that good thing to happen, something bad has to happen as well. And this sounds all well and good in theory. Surely something like this couldn't fuck someone up that much. But Nagito experienced this, like everything else in his life, to the absolute extreme. Something else he views to the absolute extreme is the idea of talent. He thinks that certain people are just born with talent, and for those chosen few, it is them, and only them, who can impact the world in a meaningful way. He views people that he deems talented as superior, almost like another race of better people, and feels that since normal people can't do anything important themselves, it should be enough for them to just support the talented people. The best thing a normal person can hope to be is a stepping stone for the talent and hope of the superior people. Now, even though he was accepted to Hope's Peak, Nagito doesn't view himself as someone talented or superior. He thinks of himself as a normal person, and this is the root of his self-hatred. He thinks he is worthless, meaningless, can't do anything right, so decides that all he can do is to be a stepping stone for his peers, who he views as superior. So whack together both of these extreme views, and you get this. Nagito wants to cause something really bad, so that the talented people can work together and overcome it, becoming stronger in the process. And he is more than willing to die and kill in order for this to happen. This is Nagito's point of view for the entire game, up until he receives the information that these people that he viewed so highly, almost like gods among men, use their talent and potential for the future in order to spread despair and chaos. He now views them as this ultimate evil, and that what they all did, literally driving the entire world to war it seems, is the epitome of despair. What could be worse than that? But wait, Nagito has the strong belief that something bad is always followed by something equally good, and he takes it upon himself to destroy all that's left of this ultimate bad, so that the world can bounce back and be happy and filled with hope again. He says in a message he left behind that if his plan worked, he wanted to be thought of as the ultimate hope. This was his goal. This is what his motivation was for wanting to kill everyone, including himself. He wanted to set the world right, continue this cycle of a bad thing followed by a good thing, and he himself wanted to be the catalyst for this ultimate good to happen. And the way he phrased what he wanted to be thought of as the ultimate hope, we also see that he was yearning for the chance to be one of the talented, superior people who he always believed that he wasn't. What I love about this case, more than anything, is how deeply rooted it is into the psyche of this incredibly well thought out and well written character. For me, the most terrifying antagonists are the ones who wholeheartedly believe that they are doing what's right. They think that they are the hero of their story, and because of this, they can't be easily swayed. You could say that Nagito is a victim of his extreme life experience and fucked up viewpoints. And I guess, to a certain extent, he is a sympathetic character. There's a reason he's a massive fan favourite. Nagito's character and his actions in this case in particular ask the player a lot of heavy questions about ends justifying the means and being a victim of circumstance, but they also prime the player for what I think is the main moral question of the whole game. Are people defined by their past actions? Well, that all sounded very conclusion-y, but hey, there are other things in this case besides Nagito. Who'd have thought? I know I've already said in this video that the chemistry between the 5 survivors of this case is beautiful, but one little moment that I love so much is their reaction to Hajime revealing he doesn't have a talent. In the last chapter, Nagito told Hajime the crushing news that it's not that he forgot his talent, but rather that he never had any in the first place, and is just a student from the reserve course. This is a massive moment in Hajime's character arc, which up until this point has been rather straightforward. He has been a little insecure about not remembering his talent, but for most of the game so far, he has been smart and confident, especially in the trials. He feels like part of the group, he feels that he is an equal. But then here comes Nagito with his new knowledge and stupid fucking views on talent, and he crushes Hajime. All of a sudden, this doubt starts to creep in. Doubt that he obviously had before the game, which we see in some little flashbacks. All he forgot at the start of the game is that he doesn't have a talent, therefore also forgetting his main insecurity. When he finds this out, he is shaken obviously. Given his extreme admiration for Hope's Peak, he must have been so crushed to know that he didn't even earn his place there. However, he pushes his feelings aside due to the impending threat of death and gets through the trial as normal, trying his best to ignore the taunts and snarky remarks from Nagito. Then, at the start of this chapter, the other guys ask Hajime what Nagito was talking about during the last trial, and Hajime comes clean that he is just from the reserve course. And nobody cares. I cannot express how much this warms my heart. They're just like, oh, that's it? Cool, let's carry on as normal then. And this is exactly what Hajime needed. He obviously thinks that being selected by Hope's Peak is a massive deal, since it's literally the first thing we find out about him. And Nagito also puts a load of importance on this warped perception of talent and potential. But in reality, who gives a shit if some elite school picked you or not? It doesn't change who Hajime is, it doesn't affect his worth or make him lesser than everyone else. Hajime is still Hajime. They see him as a friend, as a valued team member, and as an equal, before and after learning that he is from the reserve course. And I love it. It warms my little heart. Okay, now that's out of the way, here comes the lightning round of everything else I want to mention about this case but don't have a whole lot of detail for. I love Sonya's independence in this case. I love how she thinks to test out the bombs from the military base on the door to the ruin that they haven't been able to get into. It makes her much more of an active character, and we love active characters. I love how Kazuichi makes Akane and Minimaru to remind her of the close friend she lost. After the 4th case, he was obviously hurting a lot because of Sonya and Gundam, but he doesn't just wallow in pity too much. He stays up all night making a really beautiful gift for Akane, with no ulterior motive other than to help her through a tough time. I love how Chaki's character feels like she got a proper conclusion. I'ma be honest and say that I wasn't overly keen on Chiaki up to this point. It felt like she was mainly just pandering to the main target audience and didn't have much of a personality. I'll get into this more in my character rating video that's on its way. But the reveal that she was the traitor, and actually an AI program designed by the Future Foundation, was really effective and tied together so many loose ends for me. And even though I didn't like her too much, the writing at the end was so powerful and made me so upset. Also, Chaki's execution is one of my all-time favourites. It's fucking awesome. I love the cool dystopian vibe of the final island. I like how the Monokuma factory plays into the end of the trial when Monami can't fight Monokuma because there are just so many of him. The military base is also really cool. I like how we got to see the plane from the first execution, and I love how the tank we see there ends up being used in Shetty's execution. Alright, as you can probably tell, I could rave about this case until the end of time, but I'm gonna call it quits here. Thanks so much for watching, I really hope you enjoyed. The next video I upload will be my ratings of the cast of Super Danganronpa 2, so look forward to that, I'm very excited to make it. And then I'll be starting my replay of V3. I'm going to be moving back to uni this month, so expect a slight delay before I get my video essays back up and running, but I will get round to them eventually. Thanks again, goodbye.